Hello, welcome to a new year and a new show. This is Paranormal Peep Show with myself, Neil Geddes-Ward, and Andrew Chaplin. Hi Andy, how are you?
Hi guys, how you all doing? I hope you had a good new year.
Well, I have. How was yours?
A bit boring, to be honest. Just kind of like family do's, getting drunk, nothing particularly spectacular. What about you guys?
A typical Christmas for me. Typical Christmas. I don't get drunk. I don't drink, so I've always never got a hangover to look forward to, which is actually good from my point of view. So I'll just explain to listeners. This is the Paranormal Peep Show. This is the first of its kind for 2017, and Andy and I have been co-hosts on the Paranormal UK radio show with Irene and Mark, and we still help out occasionally on that Monday show, or well, it goes out on Wednesdays, I believe, but we kind of record the show on a Monday. And we've been asked ourselves to actually co-host this new show, and so we've called it the Paranormal Peep Show because we believe we're just dipping our fingers or toes or ears and eyes into the world of the paranormal, because it's such a vast subject. We can't possibly go into massive detail throughout everything. We're literally just taking a peek at what we can get our hands on. Would you agree with that, Andy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the idea of Paranormal Peep Show, obviously it's a bit saucy and a bit naughty, and it's kind of like us, it's a bit mischievous. We do obviously respect our topics, but we don't like to make things too serious. We like a little bit of a dash of humour here and there.
Well, that's right. I mean, we do have. We're hoping to get a guest on, like Eric Abor, in the sort of future.
Oh God, not him! No, don't bring him on.
Maybe Eric might like to make a quick appearance now.
No. Yeah, I think the best thing to do is keep him locked in his box. Where he's
locked in his box, then. Okay, for maybe those special occasions, perhaps.
Special occasions.
All right. Only when we get drunk.
Yeah, drunk.
Okay. All right, well, we're pressed on with tonight's show. Now, we're going to hopefully cover lots of topics, covering from a whole range of things of the paranormal, and obviously the paranormal is a very, very vast subject, and you can cover anything from ghosts, fairies, spirits, strange beasts like Sasquatches, visitations, time travel, you name it. And one of the very, very popular and certainly subjects I'm interested in and Andy is interested in is that of the UFO phenomena. And so tonight we're very pleased to welcome Dave Hodrien and Philip Kinsella, both people that I've met and worked with in the past at various places. Philip, I've worked with filming in the past at Rendlesham Forest. He kindly took us around there a few years ago, and Philip is also a very talented medium himself. And Dave Hodrien we can welcome from Birmingham, and he runs the Birmingham UFO Investigations Group up in Birmingham. And so welcome to the show, gentlemen, Philip and Dave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi guys, nice to meet you.
Yep.
Okay, Philip,
hi Andrew. Yes, nice to meet you.
Philip, if we could start with you. You're obviously a talented medium, and you do your work with the spirit world, and you've also got an interest in UFOs. How did you sort of move from the spirit world into the world of UFOs? Has it always been run on a sort of a dual basis?
The idea of UFOs has always interested me after I had a sighting when I was young. And the spiritual aspect came in much later in my life, my late 30s, and I think and I feel that both aspects of the phenomena are somehow linked to some degree, and it's taken me a very long time to try and get away from the nuts and bolts aspects of ufology, which it certainly appeared to be back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and indeed the 60s, and it's moved into a new paradigm now as we call modern times. So my interest in the UFOs has always been there, and it still is to this present day. The psychic element was something I was very fascinated with. I wanted to see if there was any truth in the proof of survival or after death encounters that people have with loved ones, and I wanted to explore that because they're much more than just flesh and blood biological machines that have an expiry date on them.
And you've had sightings yourself, haven't you, over the last few years?
Yes, I have. I mean, we had the one that was the one that happened most recently was on the 9th of April at roughly 11:15 at night, and that was 3 massive orbs. And my niece Charlie also had observed them. as well. So it's really weird that people like us, we seem to be, we're not special in any way, but we seem to draw them, or they seem to be like magnets. But no matter how much we try to understand them, they're always further away. I don't feel that we have the conscious ability in this form to fully appreciate what's exactly going on with regards to it. But that was on the 9th of April of this year that we saw 3 of them, and we thought that it would make headline news locally here, but not, even though other people have reported seeing them, but nothing came about at all.
I think you mean last year, don't you? Because we're in the new year,
yes.
of course.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we are in 2017. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I am way behind. I keep thinking we're still in 2016, but that was 2016 April of 2016.
That's definitely a case of missing time there.
Time travel. Yeah, that was on the 9th of April 2016 at 11:15 at night. That
would be in the Bedfordshire area. Is that correct?
That's correct. Bedfordshire. Yeah.
And then, but back in 1998, you also had quite an interesting experience with your brother Ronald and a friend of yours in Rendlesham Forest, of all places.
Yeah, that's right. We were researching Rendlesham Forest, and we'd done a lot of experiments after meeting Larry Warren and Peter Robbins, who, of course, are the co-authors to Left at Eastgate that came out many years ago. And Peter Robbins suggested at a UFO group that I attended that we go to Rendlesham to check it out, because there was a lot of strange things still happening there. Because we were under the impression that the only thing that happened there was the 1980 event with the US military. However, on making our exploits into the forest, we discovered there were a lot of strange things, and we had actually witnessed a triangular-shaped UFO, a massive craft with a circular undercarriage that occurred back in 1998, June of 1998, and that was incredibly amazing. And we recorded all of this and sent the information off to UFO magazines. But again, we got little in the way of understanding back from other people within the media. Not that we wanted the attention or sensational seekers. We were more interested in bringing the truth to the public, but no one wanted to know about it. So I had to write about it and bring it out that way. And of course, you yourself did a small documentary on it. Remember, you did one that was all about that. So that was an experiment that we performed that, I mean, it would take too long to explain on your show, but it had a lot to do with consciousness and about exploring consciousness. And I think when you go back, maybe my exploration to the UFO phenomena and of the psychic realm is somehow trying to bridge the gap between that conscious level, or the extendedness of consciousness beyond this physical realm, as it were. So yes, we tried to communicate with them. We did that. Before we did the whole thing as an experiment to see if we could bring a craft towards us, and that's exactly what happened. But that was all detailed in my book, Believe, Bridging the Gap Between the Psychic and UFO Phenomena, and of course Sky Crash, that the publishers brought out, Sky Crash Throughout Time, which was an extended version of the UFOs seen around Rendlesham, and that was co-authored with Brenda Butler, the original investigator into the case.
And so that was witnessed by yourself,
my twin brother and Susan. Yeah, Susan as well.
And Susan, your friend. Okay.
Our little gang, our little small gang of explorers. So, and that was incredible. And there were many other occasions where
you ran under the UFO. Is that correct?
Ran towards it.
Ran towards it. And I remember your description. You said that you fell over. It was wet or something in the grass or something. And
I took a mouthful of dirt as I fell, because it went out like a lot. It just switched off. I mean, basically, when the craft appeared above some trees across the farmer's field that I explained about, and half the farmer's field was covered in dirt, and the other half was all crop. And when this machine appeared at 10:15 at night, it just suddenly appeared like a bolt out of the blue, and it made no sound, and it was triangular in construction. The upper part was triangular, and there was a gap and a circular appendage underneath. And as I explained, one half was moving one way in a clockwise and anti-clockwise motion, if you see what I mean. They were joined, but they were separated, and one was moving one way or the other. And all these lights were coming from it, and I started to run towards it, and I felt like a half-crazed hominid, because all I wanted to do was get to it, because I wanted the truth. And we didn't take any cameras. We made a pact with them mentally or through telepathy that we didn't want any. We're not sensational seekers. We just wanted to see them. And then I started running towards it when it appeared. I mean, that's half of the story. There's a lot more towards it that ties it all together. But as I said, that's a long explanation of how we came to that point. But we didn't see any greys. We didn't see any aliens. It was just the object. And as I said, when I got underneath it, and I tripped and fell because I was running so fast, it just disappeared. And that was my take on it. But what's interesting is that I've learned a lot more, or I hope that I have understood a lot more about the parallels between our connection with, we call them, and them through us. So I'm still working on that theory with regards to our conscious connection with them. So that was many years ago.
Thank you. Now, Andy, you've obviously got a mediumistic background similar to myself and Philip. You've obviously got an interest in UFOs as well, because we always bump into each other at the UFO Academy in Watford. Yeah. How did your interest come about?
Well, before I get onto that, I'll actually say that talking of bumping into people, I've actually seen Philip a couple of his talks when he did them in, where is it, Leighton Buzzard or Milton Keynes? Do you remember the ones, Philip?
One of those, yes.
It was like a Royal British Legion type place, I think it was. I think it was Leighton Buzzard.
Oh, yeah.
But you probably do quite
a few, so I can't remember. Yes,
you probably do quite a few, and yeah, I found that really interesting. And for anyone who's not seen Philip talk, definitely do go and see it, because Philip, you bring together the worlds of kind of like the spirit and the ET element, and how they might kind of and what I've also been kind of like considering as well, how they might be coming from maybe a similar place, or there might be similarities, whereas in the past traditionally it's been very much a case of ghosts are over here and kind of like UFOs are over there, and never the twain shall meet. But I think human consciousness within this kind of both fields are beginning to realise there may be a connection, like interdimensionally, between the two.
So Andy, how did you get your interest in the UFO field? What was it? Going
for me specifically, I think it's just been like on the back burner. I mean, I've always been interested in the ghosts and the paranormal, and I have had kind of like experiences there. I can't say, I don't think I've had any UFO experiences, although there was the weird dream state type thing and seeing the trolls and get a feeling of kind of being lifted through a window, but I don't know if that was hallucinations or whether that was in an ET direction. Who knows? But I don't remember seeing a UFO as such, like Philip. And I don't know about Dave. Dave, have you seen a UFO yourself?
I have, yeah. My most impressive sighting, and nothing like as impressive as some of the things Philip's been talking about seeing, but I did see a UFO back in the summer of 2009 in Warminster, of all places, down in Wiltshire, which is known as a UFO hotspot. Since the late 70s to mid-80s, had a massive wave of sightings there, and things have been seen there ever since. I've spoken with a number of other people who've had some very, very impressive sightings down in Warminster of clearly something very, very unusual. And it was actually on a UFO Skywatch as part of the Weird Paranormal Conference down in Warminster, and we saw a dark, quite large object. I would say it was about the size of a small aircraft, and it was moving completely silently, moving quite fast, like sort of plane type speed, but absolutely silent. Had a white light on it that would flare up every few seconds, really, really bright. And the only other light on it was this dark turquoise-coloured light, sort of halfway between blue and green. Very strange, not your standard lime green. And in the morning, we looked into that. I got a lot of interviews of other people who were there on the Skywatch. The case report of that is on the BUFOG website. And yeah, it didn't fit with any known military drones or any other lighting of any other known aircraft. So to this day, it's unexplained. If it was a hoax, it was a very good one. I'll put it as that.
Of course, another possibility, Dave, is that we're unsure, although technically it is an unidentified flying object, we're unsure whether it's an alien object or whether it's like a very advanced military object.
Absolutely.
But of course, the argument there is, if it's kind of like military, why are they showing it to the public or putting it in a place where the public could view it?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that leads on to kind of an interesting angle of the UFO subject, which is, their origins are some of these things that are seen back engineered or possible advanced military craft, and that's entirely possible. But as you say, I've dealt with cases in smack bang in the middle of Birmingham and many other cities. There'd be no way that the military would fly these top secret craft that are not widely known about in full sight of people, or approach them, or even land in front of them. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Do that.
And talking of your cases, Dave,
Yes.
if you could enlighten us to, as you're the investigator for the Birmingham UFO group, if you could maybe share a case or two with us.
Sure, yeah. Well, one of my specialities, shall we say, with the subject is the abduction phenomena, or ET contact, as it's referred to. I think it's a fascinating aspect of ufology, and a lot of researchers steer clear of it because there's all sorts of very unusual elements and angles to it, including the psychic link, which Philip has already mentioned. That's a very key part of it. There's a lot of metaphysical aspects to it, which some people feel it's a bit too way out for them to cope with. But I think that the contact subject gives us a window into what these beings are actually up to here on the planet. And for that, I find it deeply fascinating. I've looked into about 250 or so contact cases from all around the world so far. Over half of those have been UK-based, of course, being a UK-based UFO group. Kathy's had a number of contact experiences throughout her life, not just a single incident. As with many contactees, she's what we refer to as a repeater, which means she's had experiences from childhood onwards. Some of those appeared to be linked with other areas of the paranormal, ghosts or psychic type phenomena, but some very, very definitely linked with UFOs. Now, probably one of her most powerful and detailed experiences occurred in 1974, and this was when she was 12 years old. Now, there's no, before I tell you about the details of this, I will say there's no physical evidence to back up this, but I've spoke with Kathy for many, many hours about her experiences, and I've got absolutely no doubt at all in her sincerity. I believe that she's recounting real memories of real incidents that have occurred to her, and you kind of get that through speaking with people. People give up a hell of a lot of their time. They're not out for sensationalism. They're not out to earn any money off it. Quite often, they are very, very scared about getting their personal details out there, and it's very brave of Kathy to even give her first name on this. A lot of people are not even happy with that. But when she was 12 years old, her and her friend were essentially out just one evening around Buxton, where she lives, and all of a sudden, they spot essentially a silver saucer-shaped object above the houses alongside the road. It's got a row of lights around the outer rim, and it essentially kind of glides round in an arc and comes down to rest in the middle of the road in front of them. And there was no traffic around at this time. It was early evening and it was very, very quiet. And it was essentially ended up hovering about a foot or so off the ground. She remembers a doorway opening in it and a ramp coming down. So this wasn't really an abduction. She was essentially invited aboard this landed object. She doesn't remember actually treading aboard. She just remembers thinking that she thought somebody was going to come out. Her next recollection was of what she believes took place aboard it, and she said it was very dark, and she just remembers seeing a kind of stairway and things. They remember seeing a boy. So her friend was there too, but there was also a young boy, and he appeared to be transfixed, like he was in a trance. He was just standing up and just staring into space. And then she remembers walking down this corridor. She didn't see any beings at that point. She just remembers kind of walking and realizing that her friend had gone elsewhere. She remembers seeing a glass cylinder, or looked like glass, and it had in it a pink liquid with what appeared to be a naked human female actually floating in this liquid, and she too appeared to be in a kind of sleep-like state. Now, I've dealt with other cases where very, very similar things have been seen, and there's a couple of cases that I've become aware of where exactly the same thing has been seen with full adult humans floating in sort of cylinders. A lot of the time, you find it's a lot younger, sort of babies or fetuses are seen inside these glass cylinders. That's linking into another angle of the subject, which I can't get into right now because it's very detailed. But essentially, she then remembers meeting these beings after that and having a conversation with them. Now, at the time, she just remembered them as being very, very beautiful. She remembered them, and that was all she could remember. She had very few details of what they were actually like. Now, I've worked with a hypnotic regression therapist on a number of these cases, and we regressed Kathy back to this experience, and she had sort of further clarity on what these beings actually looked like. And what she described was these very picturesque-looking, very humanoid people with sort of shoulder-length blonde hair. They were wearing these kind of light blue coloured jumpsuits. Now, this description matches many other contact cases on record, and these are the particular type of being we usually referred to as the Nordics, because they look like Nords, or just humanoids, or sometimes Pleiadians. Now, she remembers having this conversation with them. There was quite a lot of discussion went on between them. She said it was very, very positive, the experience. She wasn't scared at all by them. She actually felt quite comfortable and felt this connection to them, almost like they were her family. That's how she described it, like talking to her brother. And really, that's where it ended. But there's a very, very interesting aspect of it is what happened at the end of this conversation, because she realized that her time with these beings was coming to an end, and she didn't want to go. She didn't want to leave them, and she asked this being, when will I see you again, and will I ever see you again? And the being said to her, you will see us again, but only when you die. That was what it told her, and it didn't say what it meant by that, but there's an interesting link there with the afterlife, and this has come up in other cases I've looked into as well from time to time.
That's very interesting, because this is something that I've been discussing with other people, particularly over this last year, about the kind of the afterlife and the UFO phenomenon. Always in the past have been very separate books on the library shelf, so to speak, and you read one account of the life in the spirit world and it all sounds fantastic and interesting, and you read the Betty and Barney Hill abduction cases, and it seems very, very different. And I've always wondered about the kind of the connections between this world and the next, and what are the UFOs to do with this? Now, Philip, you've kind of bridged that gap yourself in your book, haven't you?
Yes, I came up with a theory, or it was I don't know if it was a credit to me. I just had a flash of inspiration in 1996, where I was trying to work out what the greys were, because I was specifically more interested in the research of the abduction-like day phenomena for personal reasons. But one of the things that I did understand was that made a correlation between the greys in the sense that they are interested in reproduction, that they are interested in wiping our memories clean so we don't remember. And the greys themselves come across as sexless androids, basically. And my theory, or the thesis that I had published, and then of course went into Believe and some of the other books, and I'm extending on a new one I'm working on at the moment, is that the greys are, in my estimation, this is not linked with all UFO encounters or aliens as we would call them, but the greys in particular are very interested in our spiritual heritage and what makes us what we are, because they come across as not understanding love or affection or the very things that make us what we are as human beings. So there does seem to be a very interesting parallel between the soul and, of course, do the greys have souls? Do they have a connection with a divine that we believe that we do? Or are they themselves outside the field of creation, whereas we understand from a religious or spiritual level that we incarnate and reincarnate, and also are sent back into what we call the other side. So my research is very different from a lot of the nuts and bolts aspects of the phenomena, because I believe that with regards to the UFO phenomena, it's morphed. It seems to morph throughout the ages and molds itself into an image that's best comfortable or best suited with the human psyche. In the 1900s, there were airships, and they became rockets, and then they became flying saucers, then triangles. And Dave and Neil, you mentioned Betty and Barney Hill case. Well, in 1963, I think that event happened in New Hampshire in America. Is that our population has grown now so much, there's not a lot of space for abductions to take place without someone viewing it somewhere. So it seems that the idea of the aliens, or the Greys as we call them, or that faction, have upped their abduction program on a level of that deals with the psyche, basically what you said, the soul, because I've also believed that they extract the human soul from its physical housing. That's why people, when they're being abducted, can go through walls and doors, and they have a sense of timelessness. The Greys communicate through telepathy, like spirit guides or loved ones from the other side do. So it's I agree with you, Dave. It's a very multifaceted, multi-complexed phenomena. But, people like yourselves, ourselves, have to keep digging to find the reality of this. And I must stress also, absolutely, that many researchers are watched. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. We've been made to look like we're conspiracy theorists from a higher organization that looks upon us and the general populace to make us look like we're idiots, that we're just tracing some conspiracy. So they've turned that finger of doubt away from themselves and onto the actual researchers who are actually doing the serious investigation. Mm-hmm. So I am absolutely certain that we're dealing with something that goes beyond the level of human understanding to this degree. But I believe that most people, like researchers, are able to understand and open up a little bit more than the general populace would.
Yes.
So can I just sort of clarify, Dave, when Kathy was taken aboard, she hasn't seen them, obviously, since that time, but...
no, she has, yeah.
Oh, she has? So even though they said the next time you'll see us is when you die, but she's seen the same ones or different ones? No, different ones,
no. She had another experience later on involving a hybrid baby. Now, some of your listeners might not know what I'm talking about there, so let me go into a bit of detail. This occurred when she was about 19, so quite a lot later on. She has vivid memories. She was very ill at the time, and she was lying on the sofa. She has vivid memories of a being of some description bringing her this baby. Now, the baby wasn't fully human. It was essentially half human, half grey. And this is an aspect of the contact phenomenon that's very, very upsetting to some people, especially those who are directly involved with it. It was very, very emotional discussing that with Kathy, and she sort of bottled up the emotions for years and years. And it's very troubling. I believe that the Greys are essentially mixing DNA, mixing their own DNA with human DNA, and creating these half-breeds, commonly referred to as hybrids. They will also mix different species, so there's these different types that are seen again and again. And some people have described seeing half of one type with half of another type. So they appear to be mixing their own genetics as well as with ours. Now, we don't really know why they're doing this. Some researchers have got theories as to why they're creating these hybrids, but it's very cryptic, really, in the answers given to that, and there's no clear answers yet. But all I can say is it's a very real and very traumatic part of the contact phenomena, and very hard for some people to accept. But I assure you, it's going on.
And Philip, with your kind of own research and things like that, you've sort of delved into the Greys and things like that. Is your experience when you've sort of spoken to people or your own research suggested a similar kind of thing of crossbreeding?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I believe that they are trying to remodify or to recreate themselves by using us as soul containers. I mean, I know that that's a darker aspect. There may be several points in question, or there may be several theories behind why the Greys are doing what they're doing, but absolutely. I mean, I've always believed that they have been outside the field of creationalism itself, and that because we are the byproduct of something that is spiritual, that we have an essence in us, a soul, they seem to be very interested in that aspect, or they seem to be very interested in what makes us tick, even though they don't understand it. And they use a lot of remote influence upon the abductees so that they are mind melding or mind control. So they're very much aware of how the human mind works, but it's almost as if, and as Dave quite rightly said, they are actually mixing and creating a new hybrid species. Is this for them to explore existence in another body, in another form? Because they seem to come across as very synthetic within themselves. But yes, I really do believe that there is a darker element, and we have to address this because, it's all very well, running in a field full of roses and sunshine. We have to face the truth that we are dealing with an aspect of the UFO phenomena which borders along the most insane. And this is why a lot of the establishments or the hierarchy are keeping it secret, because they do not want the public to know what's going on behind the scenes. Are they working hand in claw with them? That's a possibility. Or do they just turn a blind eye to their secret operations? That is a great possibility. But one thing is for sure, and as Jack Valet said, I came back from the UFO conference last year in Arizona. He said that they still don't understand what they are dealing with. And that's shocking. Although a lot of researchers are making some headway and at least making the public understand to a degree about it's a phenomenon, it's real, but we still don't know why it's happening. And the key element, Dave and Neil, is in your abductees. They have within their minds the answers locked within their psyche. And that when an abduction takes place, normally, more times than not, the assailants will screw up the mind of the individual so that it makes it very hard for them to remember their encounter.
Yes.
Now, Dave, you, as your role as investigator, you've got some interesting cases that you'd like to tell us about. So can we move on to those?
Oh, very much, yeah. I mean, we've discussed Kathy's case there. I mean, I can go over... I've dealt with literally hundreds and hundreds of UFO sightings, some close quarters, and many, much further away in the sky, but also many contact cases. I mean, I can go over another... What would you like to discuss specifically?
Be our guest, because you know that we don't.
Okay. There's an interesting, another very interesting contact case, which involves some physical evidence. I mentioned earlier on that a lot of the time with abduction specifically, there's not much physical evidence to kind of back that up. Although there is some aspects that turn up time and time again in cases such as metallic implants that are taken out of people, and also body markings that occur. So after the experience, they'll find markings on their body that coincide with memories they've had of what's taken place. I've dealt with quite a few cases like that. There was one particular case where the gentleman in question woke up with a red triangular mark on each of his inner arms. Had no recollection of how they'd been there, but he remembered being aboard essentially a craft during the night, and then he was left with these markings on the same night. Seems like much too much of a coincidence, I would say, and they did look quite artificial. But yeah, a very big case I investigated occurred in Droitwich. It came to my attention in early 2010, and what happened with this was the lady in question had a couple of abduction experiences within the space of a week. And it had essentially kind of triggered her memories, and she'd started to sort of look back through her life and realised that she'd had a lot more going on since childhood. And again, the psychic element was in there. She used to have premonitions and this sort of thing. And this turns up time and time again with these cases. And we can look at that aspect in more detail later in this discussion if you wish. But essentially, what happened was she woke up in the middle of the night and just found it quite hard to sleep. It was about 1 a.m. and she went through to check on her daughter, and it lived on the outskirts of Droitwich, and there was a big farmer's fields outside, and she looked out, and in the distance over the trees she saw what she initially thought was a plane coming into crash land. It was a kind of glowing oval shaped object, and then she soon realised it was moving too slow for it to be a plane, and it was just over the trees in the distance. So she was totally awake. She was using logic. She held a piece of paper up on the window to make sure it wasn't a reflection coming in from the room, and it wasn't. It was definitely coming from outside. So so she was quite with it. She turns back to look at her daughter, and then she glances back out the window, and the object is no longer in the distance. It's now down a lot closer, about 100 yards from her house. It's down on right down near the grass, and essentially looked like this bank of very, very bright, slightly orange lights. She couldn't see the actual shape of the object behind the lights because it was so bright, but she realised it was there. Now, Philip mentioned that these beings often do strange things to the minds of the individuals while they're undergoing the experiences, and also following them. And what they'll often do is put the individual into a kind of altered state of perception where they don't act in a normal manner. So if you put yourself in her place, it's the middle of the night and you look out and there's this glowing object right close to your house. I mean, what would you do? You'd wake up your family, you'd show them the object, you'd maybe ring the police. But what she did was essentially just say, okay, and then went back to bed. So she just took it as completely normal and just ignored it, went back to bed. She then found herself very soon, within about 10 minutes, she feels, she found herself in this other location, and she was lying down and it was dark, and her daughter was there, her eldest daughter. And her daughter leans into her and says, don't worry, Mum, they're not going to harm you. And then she feels this kind of rushing sensation, and she finds herself in this other open environment. She's kind of floating in this darkened space. Interestingly, there were these glowing grid lines all around her, sort of squares of glowing yellow lines. And that's very, very rare. I've looked into other cases to try and find similarities, but nothing has come up exactly the same. You do get certain cases which have differences, but also many, many similarities again and again reported. So she sensed there was a being up behind her left shoulder, quite tall. Didn't turn around to look at it. She was paralyzed. A lot of the time in these experiences, the individual is paralyzed. I believe that's done on purpose to prevent them from essentially lashing out or panicking or stopping what's taking place. It doesn't happen all the time. It's one of the myths about the abduction phenomena is that people are always paralyzed, and that therefore it can be explained away as sleep paralysis or other things like that. Well, it's absolutely not. I've dealt with many cases where the person has been able to move and has walked around the craft fully freely, but a lot of the time they are paralyzed. So she sensed that there were these small beings around her, and she started to feel them pressing her body. They were kind of moving down her and touching the sides of her body, doing some sort of scan or something. And she was kind of scared it was going to hurt her back because she had a bad back. She felt a voice in her head tell her her back was going to be okay. So they were talking to her telepathically. She then underwent a procedure, which I won't go into details with. It was quite embarrassing. But she was very brave in talking me through what happened with that. And then in the distance, a doorway opened all of a sudden. This rectangular door opens, and there's her eldest son standing in the doorway, and she's confused as to why he's there. I'll get back to that. So then she feels like the experience is coming to an end, and all kind of like it's rushed, like she's been there too long. This is what she's sensing, and she can hear these beings sort of talking to each other, not to her directly. She can just hear them talking to each other, and then all of a sudden she finds herself back in bed. Well, she gets up and she wakes her husband up, and she's like, "You're not going to believe what's just happened," and she was really quite shocked by it. She never experienced anything like it before, and she was really, really scared. Understandably so. She felt it didn't really feel like a nightmare. It felt a lot more vivid. It felt a lot more like it just happened. And her husband believed it was a jinn. So the lady was actually Muslim, and something they believe in is the jinn, essentially a genie, or poltergeist, sort of poltergeist type stuff. But it wasn't that. It felt totally different to her, and she said it couldn't be that. Well, her husband happened to put together video cameras and for a living, and he decided to set up a camera in the room. The reason for this was that she was getting more and more scared as the days went on. She felt very scared about going back to bed and sleeping in the room. This is extremely common for people. It's one of the after effects of having a contact experience. Very scared to go to bed at night, of course, because your mind is aware that something's taken place that you can't fully explain. So he sets up this camera in the room to prove to her that nothing's coming for her in the night. That's all fine. Anyway, this camera's set up, and they start filming every night. They just leave it on overnight. Several days after the camera's set up, she has a second experience. With this second experience, she finds herself in another location now, almost looked like a doctor's office of some description. There's wooden panels all over the walls, and she's lying down on this flattened bench. And there's this little guy next to her. Looks like a little doctor guy. He's wearing a white sort of doctor's coat. He's got short red hair, some glasses on. Looked human enough, but strange and short. And he puts his hands over her body a short distance above her and starts moving down her and explaining to her ailments. Sort of says, like, you used to have a stomach ulcer there and this sort of thing, but it's cleared up. So he was doing some sort of body scan. And again, she senses the big being up by her shoulder. And then the experience comes to an end, after she believes about 15 minutes. It was quite a quick thing. She feels this rushing sensation. All of a sudden, she's back in the bed. Again, realizes, really, really scared. Again, realizes something very strange has gone on. Wakes her husband up. They go back off to sleep. In the morning, of course, they've got the camera, haven't they? So they go and have a look. Like, okay, let's something happened in the night. Maybe something will turn up on the camera. Well, yeah. Lo and behold, about 3:33 in the morning, or just after, all of a sudden, the sheets seem to kind of rise up a bit. Sort of almost like she's arcing her back in the bed, and then all of a sudden they just sink right down, really, really flat, almost like she's dematerialized. So she doesn't float out of bed or float through a window or float up to the ceiling or anything like that. Don't see anything like that. But she appears to dematerialize from the bed. Bed sheets lay completely still for about 13, 14 minutes. And then all of a sudden, they're just right up really high in the air. And when they settle back down, she's back there in bed. Now, she was quite a big lady, and it just seemed impossibly flat, the sheets, for it to be an optical illusion. And it did seem to coincide with this second experience, with the length of time it had taken and this sort of thing. Now, if that video is real, and I've got no doubt that they, there's no doubt that it's a real video, as in they didn't hoax it. I don't believe that for a second. They actually sent the video off to the program Fact or Faked. It's an American-based TV show where they essentially take paranormal videos and try to prove or disprove them. And that featured on one of the episodes of their show. And they couldn't disprove the video. They were able to replicate it with the use of kind of hydraulics inside the bed and this sort of nonsense. I saw the room where this took place, and I saw the camera it was filmed on. And I assure you that it was not a hoax video. The family, especially the lady involved, were extremely scared of what had taken place. It was quite obvious that they suffered emotional trauma from it all. Now, if that video is real, then it is, I believe, a genuine abduction taking place on camera, and therefore very, very important.
I've seen that video because you did show it at the Probe conference, didn't you? And everyone was open-mouthed. I remember that when they saw that. There's gasping in amazement. And is it available for people to view on YouTube?
It is indeed. I wouldn't look for it on YouTube. It's been nabbed by various people. Probably the best place to look at it would be on the BUFOG website. If you go to the contactee cases section and look for the Droitwich case, it's inside the case report, including full detailed analysis by myself. So yeah, you can have a watch of it there.
Droitwich, was that?
Yes.
Okay, It's not a town I'm familiar with.
It's just on the outskirts of Birmingham.
Okay, so you mentioned her son standing in the doorway or something. You said you
I did indeed.
That. Yeah, I
did indeed. Yeah, and actually, this links with the second experience as well with the little doctor guy. So quite often these beings they do portray a different appearance to themselves, and sometimes the kind of mask sort of slips away a bit, and in flashbacks people can sort of start to see them in their true form. And also hypnotic regression, again, very, very controversial. And many people may say, okay, she was under hypnosis, so she could have false memories, and it's very true that false memories can occur with hypnotic regression, and it's the reason why a lot of contactees don't choose to go down that route in the first place. However, with her experience, she had quite a lot of memories already, and essentially the hypnotic regression just seemed to sort of fill in the gaps a bit. Now, with the first experience, she no longer saw her son standing in the doorway. What she described was a very tall, thin being, slender arms, long, large head, round black eyes. It was essentially a grey, a very tall grey, about 8 foot high. Now, her son is quite tall, so that would match, and it appeared that they'd used the image of her son and masked that. With the second experience, again with the little doctor guy, this one's really fascinating, because the hypnotic regressionist, a guy named Rob, I no longer work with him. He's sort of moved away, but he asked her to describe this little guy, and she said his face looks like it wants to fall off. That's the word she used. And then he said, okay, you describe the hands, and she said, they're human hands. And then a moment later, she's, no, they don't look right. The fingers are too long and pointed. And what I believe was happening with this was that the being next to her was a grey, putting on this persona of a doctor. And this fits in with other cases. I've looked into other cases where exactly the same thing's been described by these beings. Just they hide themselves in the form of a doctor, usually wearing a kind of white coat. And it may be because of the kind of how clinical the environment looks and how clean, that it's very reminiscent of being in a hospital ward. With doctors around, and some people after it actually get a phobia of hospitals, or sometimes the dentist, because of the similarities to their contact experience. It does leave lasting phobias with people. One of the many reasons why I believe we're dealing with a real thing here with contact. So that there is commonly called a screen memory, and my personal belief on what's happening with that is that they are masking their appearance to essentially cause less fear in the person undergoing the experience, and quite often they will choose something. It's almost like they go in and cherry pick something from the person's mind. There's one particular case I dealt with where the man involved had an interest in the military, and he'd always wanted to grow up to be a soldier, and they essentially appeared to him as American soldiers holding guns.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and there's another case where two girls from the 1950s, one of the earliest cases I've looked into, but I think it was 1954 that had an experience, and these beings appeared to them in the form of these men in suits with these fedora hats on. Now, you may think that has similarities to the Men in Black, and there is that kind of link there with that. But I believe that these were, again, beings, and they were putting on the appearance of how men would have dressed back in the 1950s. So that they chose something that was familiar to the girls, something they would see every day in normal life. So that's my take on what's going on with that. I believe they do it to prevent the fear of the experience and make it seem more normal. But of course, sometimes that doesn't always work.
It's an interesting thing, because we did have David Caton speak at High Wycombe Paranormal Group
Yes.
at the end of November. And one of the cases he mentioned was the radio telescope. I forget which one it was, up in the northeast or northwest of Britain. And I believe a UFO was spotted flying around there, but this lady identified, she said it made the sound of a Spitfire, which was sort of an old kind of Merlin engine type of sound, and you're thinking, hang on, these things are normally silent, and this one's chugging away, flying around this radio dish. And David Caton was under the impression that he believed they kind of try and blend in with our society to a certain extent, and mimic as best as they can. But he said they sometimes get things wrong, and like the era was wrong, he felt, in that case. And this is why it was doing the sound of a Spitfire. And you saw about the lady suspecting that the face was about to fall off this small doctor, as if they can't quite mimic everything
Yes.
totally. And there's been cases, hasn't there, where people see owls or something and they suddenly
Very
change
common.
back into the grey or something like that.
Yeah.
Now Philip, you had was it a case of a wizard type character that you felt could have been alien?
Well, yes, that was back in the winter of 1989, and that character was more human in appearance, but still the shape of a grey. That illustration did go into one of my books, but that was more of a wizard type being that was very, very bizarre after the initial abduction that I had. That has taken me a long time to deal with and come to terms with, because it was very embarrassing and also very very deep, and it took me a long time to actually come to terms with what happened initially in the winter of 1989 with that. But yes, I had seen one of them, and the communication is done very much through mental means, or a process of mental communication that is almost as if you can hear the voices, but they come on almost mechanically, like a robot. So yes, I did have that. And interestingly, going back to what you said, Dave and Neil, about the UFOs molding into our reality, well, and trying to, as best they can, to disguise themselves. I've had 4 visions. When I say visions, very powerful dreams, because I've been asking for some help in higher levels, if that may sound ridiculous, but the dreams I've had are all the same. And I see in these dreams these UFOs, and I'm so amazed and pointing at them, and they're coming closer. And as they come closer, they turn into, and I'm holding them, and it turns into like an old can or something, piece of rubbish. And I've tried to work out the symbology between this, and I think what I'm seeing here is that they will appear to us as things that we wouldn't even recognize, even if it was put straight in front of our eyes. Unless, of course, they're interacting with the individual on that very strong physical stroke psychic level. So I do agree with you totally that they are masking themselves or masquerading around in objects that we would now, today, find very difficult to distinguish. Is it them or is it us? You see what I mean there? So I'm still working on that one, but it is a very, very but also fascinating subject. And I've always had that, I don't know what it is, like you, Dave, like you, Neil, a real deep, wanting to know the truth, and only the truth. When you bypass all the disinformation and the fakery and all the rest of it, the truth is what we're after. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I think what we'll do, we'll take a break here now, gentlemen, and we'll return in a few minutes after these commercials, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about something that's of interest to Philip in particular, which is the Rendlesham Forest case, and I know that Dave has some knowledge of that, and there's been a lot of talking and tweeting and everything about the Rendlesham Forest case of late, and it's also, I think it's coming up to its anniversary in a few years' time, and they're planning a conference, I believe. Well, that's certainly the talk at the moment anyway, a sort of an anniversary of the Rendlesham Forest case. So we'll talk a little bit about that after the break, so stay tuned for some more after this.
Glenattai Publishing is proud to announce the release of our latest novel, The Demdike Legacy by Barry Durham. Set in a quiet village in Lancashire, England, an enigmatic murder reignites a legacy of witchcraft thought to have died out 400 years before, when the Pendle witches were hanged at Lancaster Castle in 1612. As the death toll rises, the descendants of the original Pendle witches are forced out of hiding and assist the police in tracking down the killer before they are all wiped out. The Demdike Legacy is a thrilling mystery novel that blends modern detective work with old-world pagan practices. The Demdike Legacy is now available in both softcover and ebook formats on Amazon.com and at Glenattai.com. Glenattai Publishing is pleased to announce the release of the award-winning novel The Girl Who Rode Dolphins by Michael Ganis. A mysterious young girl is discovered in the ocean off the coast of Haiti, surrounded by a pod of the most extraordinary dolphins ever encountered. Together they protect a secret cove on Navassa Island teeming with life, and which holds mysterious secrets that must be protected at all costs from dark forces intent on exploiting them. The winner of 5 book awards, The Girl Who Wrote Dolphins is an exciting, nail-biting adventure set in the Caribbean Ocean that will leave you spellbound with its mixture of high seas action and unique mysticism. The Girl Who Wrote Dolphins is available in both softcover and ebook format on planetai.com, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon.com.
Good evening, Agent 47. It has come to our attention, through the highest intelligence sources, that Irene Allen Block has published her novel, The Psychic Spy. Our sources tell us that The Psychic Spy is a riveting thriller about Eileen Evans, a beautiful young psychic who is recruited by British intelligence during the Cold War to participate in their top-secret remote viewing spy program. Eileen soon finds herself plunged deeper into the darkest heart of the intelligence community as she is ultimately trained as a spy and a psychic assassin. Nick Redfern says The Psychic Spy is filled with adventure, intrigue, and shadowy characters, and as Irene Allen Block shows, the mind is a mysterious and dangerous tool. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to immediately purchase a copy of The Psychic Spy by Irene Allen Block, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and planetai.com. This tape will self-destruct in 1 second.
Deep in the heart of the XYZ files, mulled wine and sulky are hard at work on trying to prove predictions are coming true.
Now for God's sake, pick another card, Eric Borer.
I am not Eric. I am mulled wine. Don't let me lose my concentration.
Well, kill that goddamn awful music.
Look, it puts me in the right frame of mind to predict the future with my special psychic spirit cards.
And what predictions for 2017 do you have?
Well, James, I predict that the multi-billionaire Donald Trump will be president by January 2017.
Oh, good God.
And also, I predict, please, thank you, Pam, the Z-Files will return for next year.
Oh, please, draw another card.
Wait, I've got something.
What? Come on, what do you see?
I'm seeing what looks like, curiously, some kind of peep show. Yes, something peeping. A peeping Randigit.
That was this year and the charges were dropped.
No, I'm feeling it very strongly. Parachute? No, it's not parachute.
Paratrooper?
No, it's paranormal. A peep show about the paranormal. A paranormal peep show.
Sir, you are not normal.
No, paranormal peep show, definitely. Thank you, Pam. Coming January 2017 with Andy Chaplin and Neil Geddes Ward. I know who they are. I can see it on the cards.
Join Andy and Neil as they take a peek into the paranormal stories of past and present, starting January 2017 on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's out of here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With a mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find news and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
This is Barry Fitzgerald from Ghost Hunters International. In my book, In the Mist of Gods, I explore the world of the fairies or fae. This is not the whimsical winged creatures romanticized in modern literature and popular culture, but old-world, intelligent, and sometimes dangerous beings hidden in the tunnels, mounds, and rafts in countries all over the world. Known by many names, the fae coexist with mankind and at times come in direct contact with unsuspecting people whose lives are changed forever. In the Mystic Gods is a powerful book that chronicles my years of research into the enigma and legend of the fairy, and examines their metamorphosis into the modern-day extraterrestrial phenomenon. In the Mist of Gods is available in both softcover and Kindle format on Amazon and on glennontea.com.
This lady called Helen Duncan is actually, I think, one of the most interesting people I've ever come across. She was born in Callander in Scotland in 1897, and in 1944 she became the last person ever to be imprisoned under the Witchcraft Act of 1735. When she was at school and she couldn't answer a question, she used to put the school book under her chair, and she'd put it out later and someone had written in the answers. Albert is the name of her spirit guide, and he was a tall man with a strong Australian accent, and he came through. I'm very sorry to have to tell you that a British battleship has just been sunk. I have 1,400 of her officers and men newly arrived in the spirit world with me. And there's a big gasp in the audience.
Physical light is too much of a strong element to work with under physical seance conditions, and she said that basically she was exposed to normal daylight or room interior light. She said that ectoplasm was coming out of her eye and it whipped back into her eye. As it did so, it lashed against her face like a whip and caused like a burn across her face.
Spiritualism offers a third position, and I think this is obviously a third position that the government don't want us to have.
Now this very much leads into the whole kind of like Illuminati control structure in terms of keeping the masses dumbed down and stupid and watching, soap operas and things, and not focusing on what is the government really doing and what is life really all about.
Have you ever wanted to visit the south of Italy? Amalfi, Ravello, Positano, Sorrento, places of immense beauty on the Amalfitana coast. Nearby Vesuvius stands proud against the sky, shadowing the ancient Roman ruins of Pompeii. Take a boat ride to the Isle of Capri, tour the island and make sure to visit the Blue Grotto. Sit in the charming piazza cafes of Amalfi or Ravello, or visit the quaint shops and the must-see churches and villas. Cool off bathing in the clear blue waters of the Mediterranean Sea. In the midst of all this beauty lies the picturesque hillside village of Pontoni that dates back to the Middle Ages. Pontoni, with its relaxed atmosphere, boasts 2 pizza restaurants, the Trattoria L'Antico Borgo and that of San Giovanni. You can also eat or just have a drink of your choice while sitting at the table under the canopy at the Blue Bar in the piazza, close to the 12th century church of St. Giovanni. Pontoni, with its old aristocratic houses, bell towers, and churches, is a great starting point for hikers and lovers of nature and mountain trails. To the Valle della Ferrari, or the famous Tower of the Zero. The tower is where the Duchess of Amalfi, Giovanna of Aragon, also known as the Mad Giovanna, who was imprisoned in the tower centuries ago. Stay in Pontoni, in the self-catering apartments of Il Petrale, the beautiful casa belonging to Carmiana Respoli, who will warmly welcome you when you arrive. Sit out on the veranda looking at the valley down to the town below of Amalfi. Il Petrale, a haven of peace in the heart of this magnificent place called Pontoni. For more information, email us at carminerispoli@email.it. That's Carmine Rispoli, CarmineRispoli, @email.it.
The work of medium Philip Kinsella.
The reading that I had by Philip this evening was spot on.
I feel it's important for those people who are waiting for their message from their loved ones to show how they passed over and what part they played in that person's life. The spirit will then probably talk about the person that they're coming through, about their life and about what they're worried about, what their concerns are. Normally a spirit will remember how they passed over, but sometimes it's not always the case. Sometimes a spirit will pass over very tragically, very violently, and they're left in confusion. So all I will get is a jumble of confused memories.
What was she spying on someone next door?
Always looking out the window.
Oh my goodness, I don't get the problem of spirits sending in me into 3 people at one time. I may have what I call a queue jump that will come in, but I will notice that as I'm reading for a particular person in the audience, there's someone else knocking on the door basically and wanting to come in. So once I've finished my reading, I will then go to that person, and sometimes it's difficult because when you get a queue jump or someone from the other side that seems to jump the queue, you've got to find your link with that person. Normally I go directly to an individual and read for them. Other times someone will come on and through to your consciousness and throw you slightly.
Yeah, you were spot on with everything you said. There wasn't one thing you didn't say that wasn't true.
To find out more about the psychic work of Philip Kinsella, visit philip-kinsella.co.uk. That's philip-kinsella.co.uk.
Hello, this is Lord Lewis Smythe, formerly of the House of Lords, and you're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Oh, sorry about that.
Welcome back to part 2 of the Paranormal Peep Show with myself, Neil Geddes-Ward, and Andy Chaplin.
Hello.
Andy, over to you.
Right, so Philip, one of the major incidents within the UK, possibly the number one incident, is of course the Rendlesham Forest incident. And there's been a lot of speculation about whether the light that appeared was a lighthouse in the distance that was flashing, or whether it was really a UFO. I don't know if you want to kind of enlighten us and tell us what your take on it.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I have to totally discount the theory of the lighthouse because that is ridiculous. I mean, myself, my twin brother Ronald, and a friend of ours, Susan, used to make a lot of trips to Rendlesham under the recommendation of Peter Robbins and Larry Warren that we had met at a local UFO group called Beams, the British Earth and Aerial Mystery Society, which had been created by Kenneth John Parsons, and of which I had worked alongside for a few years. And on entering the forest, it is very, very strange because Peter Robbins had told us that there's a lot of strange things happening there. So it was our chance to go and, check it out. And we had a lot of strange activity that too long to mention on this radio program, but a lot of paranormal things have been going on there and lights have been seen. But I can definitely vouch to you, and not just the armchair viewers that who scoff at this, but it is a very strange place and steeped in a lot of ancient controversy. We had witnessed in 1998 a huge UFO that we had summoned by meditating a week before because we wanted to see them. We'd asked, we wanted to see if it was true, that they were real. And we were rewarded with a sighting of a massive triangular-shaped craft with a circular undercarriage that made no sound, but was beautiful and very, very strange to explain in words. Exactly, the whole drama that unfolded. But I documented this in Believe, my book, one of my books, Believe, and Sky Crash Throughout Time, which I co-authored with the original investigator, Brenda Butler. She was the co-author with Jenny Randalls and Dot Street to Sky Crash: A Cosmic Conspiracy that came out back in 1984 by Neville Spearman. And we decided, myself and Brenda, who I met through some form of synchronicity in the forest. I didn't know that she lived there or was residing there, and we teamed up, and I've been out with Brenda, and we've done a lot of night vigils, and we had also been hounded by military helicopters that wanted us out of the forest because we'd been out there very late at night. And the experiences were very strange. I mean, that was some years ago now, and I had the zest and energy then to go out there and do all the running and, the Mulder and Scully stuff, But yes, it is very real, and I don't doubt that the military had actually seen a craft of unusual origins. They were very guarded about this whole thing. It was steeped in a lot of secrecy, and now it's come to light, not just only from Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, but also from Penniston and Burroughs, who were the two men who actually saw the original craft when it had landed outside of the base during the initial the winter of 1980 event.
Philip, have you been to the actual exact location where they saw
Yes.
UFO? Now, putting my kind of like my scientist skeptics hat on, can you see the lighthouse from there? Can we completely discount the lighthouse?
You cannot see the lighthouse. You can see the beam of the Orford Ness lighthouse, but I can assure you of one thing. It is too weak to represent any form of UFO or object for that matter. And if the US military were chasing the lights from the Orford Ness lighthouse, God help our military. That's all I can tell you. Those men had seen and were hounded by a UFO of such extraordinary origin that you're going to tell me that they would take out most of the military out there to go and chase the light from the Orford Ness lighthouse. It's a cover story, and it's complete, total rubbish.
It's sort of the old swamp gas, foil balloon.
It's a modern day version of it, isn't it? Really. I mean,
Dr. J. Allen Hynek actually walked out when they said many years ago in a press conference that that's what some witnesses had seen, because he was so disgusted by the hoaxing and the cover-up.
I mean, I've seen lighthouses. I've been to. I mean, we're not all living on the coast and things like that. But when we go on holidays and things like that, I've seen lighthouses up close and from distances, and you can see them. And I don't ever jump to the conclusion, oh my God, it's a UFO. And as Philip said, these are trained military people, and if they've been on that base for a fair few years, I mean, obviously some are posting over there from the United States on regular. They come over for their first stint. They're going to learn sooner or later that there's a lighthouse out in the vicinity. So, on the Christmas night, they're not likely to sort of jump out and think, oh my God, there's a UFO. It must be a lighthouse or whatever, or mistake it, because they've seen the lighthouse previous nights in that winter anyway.
Yeah,
so
it's
why
nothing,
would they
it's nothing
suddenly...
new to them, is it?
That's exactly right. It's familiar territory. So for the MOD or skeptics or whoever's trying to write off the whole thing under the guise of a lighthouse, I mean, it doesn't.
Well, Penniston actually described, going up to with Burroughs the craft that was witnessed by them, and that was no light from a lighthouse. That was a physical, structured craft. So that is something that most people tend to discount. But I believe their testimony. I've seen them talk, and I've met most of them, and I can tell you that those guys were pretty screwed up by the encounter as well. So they can try and fob us all off by making us believe it was this or that. But when you're actually there, when you're in the forest, when you have these experiences, it's a very different experience altogether. Totally.
Dave, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, I mean, talking about the lighthouse theory, I fully agree that is nonsense. It's the theory has actually been put together by Ian Ridpath, a known UFO skeptic, or some may say debunker, and his theory ignores about 9/10 of the evidence for the Rendlesham case. All it takes into account is Colonel Holt and what he saw through the forest on that when they went out to investigate, seeing this pulsing light through the trees. It doesn't take into account what they came across in the farmer's field as a glowing oval-shaped object with what looked like molten metal dripping off it. Doesn't take into account the fact that it then went up into the sky and there were multiple objects firing down beams of light at their feet. I'm pretty sure that lighthouses don't do that. So that theory is just blown out of the water. And that's just the one night. This took place over 3 nights. And there were multiple craft. Some of them went in over the base and were shining beams of light down into the weapons storage area where they were holding nukes. And I believe the main reason for the cover-up of the Rendlesham Forest incident is the fact that they were not supposed to have nukes on the base at that time, and these craft were essentially scanning the nuclear warheads. Now, there's many other cases on record over the last century, right up to present day, where this is going on, and I believe it's one of the main reasons for the cover-up of the UFO subject at large.
So are you saying then, Dave, that they're trying to cover up the fact that they've got nuclear weapons where they shouldn't be, and this is why they're trying to sort of cover up the UFO stories as well?
I believe that one aspect of it is the fact that they had nukes there and they weren't supposed to, and they made. They essentially weren't supposed to be no nuclear warheads stored on the base at that time, but there almost absolutely were. The other thing is the fact that they don't want the public to know that these beings and their craft are essentially monitoring our nuclear program and are in fact in control of it. There have been many cases on record, including all nuclear facilities in America. And also plutonium creation facilities as well, where UFOs have come in over these bases and have actively investigated them, in some cases actually switching off nuclear warheads or even turning them on. And this is across both America and Russia. It's a worldwide thing, and it's really going on.
I've heard about this, and there was one point which they were almost about to launch, and then it was kind of averted last minute, from what I understand.
Yes. That took place in Russia. They had no fail-safe on it. In America, it also happened in America on another occasion, but they had a safety switch. In Russia, they had no safety switch at the time, and they were terrified that it was going to actually launch the nukes. Now, what I believe is going on with this, and there's different takes on why they're doing this, but I believe it's a display of power to show our military what they're capable of, and and if they want to, they can switch on and off our nukes at will. Now, there's no way that the military would want that going large and want the general public to be aware of that information. It would create absolute panic to know that we're not in control of that situation.
There could be another angle, possibly, in that if these are positive ETs, let's just like hypothetically say they're positive, they could be saying, look, the reality is if you were to use these, just think of the implications, and kind of like getting it to that stage where they're almost about to launch obviously got people's adrenaline going and thinking about, oh my god, what if they actually launch? What a mistake that would be. Maybe it's kind of something along the lines of, hey humans, what are you doing? Think about this carefully.
That's an interesting take on it, but then I say, why not just switch all our nukes off?
Because we'd rebuild more and we'd switch them back on again.
Yeah, it's true. It does seem to be kind of random missile bays in random locations and random missile tests. However, in the contact phenomena, a lot of contactees are kind of shown environmental type warnings by these beings. Quite often they're shown images, sometimes directly into their heads as a kind of vision, other times on a sort of physical screen aboard the craft. And they're shown kind of the world exploding, bombs going off, forest fires, this sort of thing. This is a regular thing that's reported in contact experiences.
With the fact that they're switching off nuclear missiles and letting contactees know that there's a possibility of nuclear war by visions and things like that. There's an argument. I mean, I've been listening to one of our friends, Ben Emlyn Jones, have a discussion with a friend of his online, skeptics debate, and this guy Colin, which I'd love to maybe get on here at some point, is a skeptic of everything basically. Ghosts, UFOs, fairies, you name it. He doesn't want to believe in it. It's up to him, of course, at the end of the day. But one of the arguments he says, and that of others, is that if there's UFOs, why don't they land on the White House lawn? And leading from that, I could then say, playing devil's advocate, why don't the ETs, or whoever they are, that is, we assume they're ETs, why don't they give these visions to the leading presidents or parliamentary people of the world of nuclear war and things like that? Because surely you really should be kind of talking to the leaders. It is that old thing of take me to your leader, I would have thought. What do you guys think?
My take on that, first of all, the not landing on the White House lawn, good old cliche, is that I believe that these beings are working covertly on an ongoing genetic type program over a long period of time. I think it's been going on for centuries, and I don't see any signs of it coming to an end, at least not in the cases I've been investigating.
Wasn't there a flyby of UFOs in the 1940s over the White House?
There was indeed, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 52.
They do occasionally present themselves openly to the public, but a lot of the time you'll find that cases occur in very rural areas or in the dead of night when there's not many people around, and I believe that that's on purpose so that they're not observed. caused by other people. There's also this time distortion element that goes on with many cases where they appear to kind of shut down the surrounding area so other people may not witness it because they've kind of been temporarily sort of switched off, so to speak. So yeah, I believe they're certainly working covertly, although at times have openly presented themselves for whatever reason, such as the Phoenix Lights incident. Absolutely incredible case, and absolutely them rather than military, I would say, with that one. Now, as for the other point, which it sort of leads on from that, really. I think. Sorry, I lost my track there.
Okay, I was just saying about the president. Why are the ETs contacting presidents?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, my personal take is that they are changing the contactees themselves on a kind of subconscious level. A lot of the time, the individuals undergoing these experiences, they'll have sort of deep conversations with these beings, and at the time, it makes perfect sense to them. Yeah, but after their experience, when they think back to it, they have very little recollection of what was actually discussed. They know they've had a deep conversation of some kind, and they realise it very sort of deep things were discussed, often complex mathematics, but they can't remember it after the fact. And it's my belief that they're changing the contactees on a subconscious level. Now, why they're doing this and to what gains, we don't yet know. It's possible that they are not aware that telling these random individuals of the public, because that's what it appears to be, a kind of random take of the public, get taken, all walks of life, all age groups, slight female to male ratio, but not too much. So they may not be aware that telling these individuals isn't going to actually change that much on a global level, or they may have some bigger plan that we're not yet aware of.
Philip, do you agree that they're taking people randomly, or is there more of a kind of an agenda behind the whole thing?
I believe that there is an agenda, and I have to go back to the point in question that if I can use the Greys as an example, as we call them, is that they obviously, as Dave said before, and I agree most definitely, is that they target certain individuals for their program or convert programs, genetic, spiritual, whatever. Now, the other interesting thing is that it appears to me that the military themselves cannot control them, and I am under the impression that there is a huge installation, not only just in England but also in America, where they are underground bases where they are monitoring these objects on a daily basis. And I believe that they are aware also of the individuals who are abducted. And I remembered speaking to a very high-up gentleman whose name I cannot disclose and will not, and that is not for sensationalism. But he told me that you would be surprised, he said, on what files they have on researchers and abductees. And I kind of like grinned and asked him, is it true that, are these things true? And his reply was just a nod in the yes. So, and also the UFO phenomena or certain aspects of UFOs are trying to put us in our place to say, catch us if you can, but we are definitely in charge. So I don't think the military are in charge of this. I believe that they try to explore all avenues of the technology or certainly the morphogenic parts of technology, because these things seem to mold themselves and manifest into different images. So I don't think the military are totally in the know. I think they have an understanding of it, but yes. I don't think they have a complete hold on it. No.
I think they'd like to be in control of it, but they're not. They're just they want to be controllers, but they can't help but be observers for the most part, I think.
You know what they say? They say the best way to control or to subjugate someone is through silence, and that's exactly what they've done. They've kept silent. They have not in any way given any clue as to what us researchers are trying to look for. They're not. It's up to us, and we're the people, many people, wonderful people, who they consider ordinary. God knows what they are if they're not ordinary, but it's up to us to try and find the answers, because they have not done any work in any avenue to help the public in any way. There have been a few whistleblowers, but normally they get killed or they're disgraced or they just disappear.
Now, for listeners hearing a very strange alien-type noise, that was in fact someone sneezing, I think. But Dave, I believe you've got a point to add on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this kind of links into the Men in Black phenomena. Sorry, are you all there still?
Yeah, we're all awake.
Sorry, it's gone very, very quiet.
We're not subdued.
They haven't abducted us.
No, good. Yeah, essentially the Men in Black phenomenon is real and does occur in certain contact cases, and indeed just straight up UFO sightings. But a lot of the time, people are under the impression that the Men in Black just tell people not to talk to the public, and they're like, you mustn't tell anybody about what you saw. It was the planet Venus, and there are cases on record that are exactly like that. Absolutely, where they've warned people. There's actually a case involving my group, which I can go over in a minute, involving a kind of backward psychology on that level. But a lot of the time with the cases, they appear to be trying to find out more information from the contactees themselves. So they'll ask them a lot of questions, or they might tap their phone, or just watch them and monitor them. And it's almost like they're trying to find out about these beings through the contactees, because they're aware that they've had experiences. So they don't tell them not to talk about their experiences, but they try to gain information from them. And I've had a number of cases like that. In fact, probably more than half of the cases involving Men in Black type incidents have been on that level rather than a direct warning.
Now, with obviously they're trying to listen in and try and find out more about them and what they want. Now, we always talk about the Roswell thing as like one of the famous crash retrievals of like the 20th century, and there's been other cases that people talk about in New Mexico and things like that, and we've supposedly got a few crash retrievals occurring on British soil that you know about, Dave, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean the Berwyn Mountains incident in Wales, that was probably one of the most famous ones, and they claimed that was a kind of a meteorite that had gone into the hillside, but the military cordoned off the area, and there were many witnesses to that. That were seeing sort of bright lights over the mountain in the air. Before it occurred, there was a very, very loud sound of something hitting the mountainside, and then an apparent cover up by the military. So yeah, certainly tends to suggest a UFO crash. I mean, we could talk about Berwyn Mountains for hours, which we haven't got, but yeah, it's all available online. There's full websites available about that case.
And any other ones of more recent times? Because that was in the mid-70s, I believe, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. That was a good while back. No really recent ones that I'm aware of. I don't know about you, Philip. Are you aware of any recent UFO crashes?
Well, no, I'm always on the lookout, but most of the times I hear from people asking why is it that these UFOs only crash in remote areas. Well, my answer to that is because they have been forced down by our military, and the military will then, what they will do very, very, very cleverly, is make sure that the craft is in a desolate region, or try to bring it down in an area that isn't overpopulated. This is exactly where you can go into a whole new area of military back-engineered projects, which I do believe most definitely, and of the military trying to replicate new machinery, or machinery that they can try to understand from alien technology, as we call it. But that is why the UFOs do come down in remote areas, because I think, I've said before about this whole thing about UFOs. We deal that can travel apparently faster than light. They blink in and out very quickly, interdimensionally, or they morph their craft. So I will tell you that when I was in Arizona at the conference last year in February, and they showed a film footage of a military film footage of a UFO that was like a disc and an orb, sorry. And it went into the water, split in two, and morphed back into one again. And this captivated the audience, which means that we're dealing with a technology that goes beyond our current level of understanding. Or is it? It could be that, we are given all the kindergarten pieces, and the military have the Aladdin's lamp of technology, or most of that anyway. And I'm sure you've heard about the breakaway civilization that's come into a lot of talk lately about, and I think that means that the military are keeping hold of their secret projects, and we are just a fodder to them that's given just the bits and pieces to toy around with.
almost like the Hunger Games Society sort of class system.
Yes. Definitely. Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
Now I've got to say this, guys. I don't know if you guys were aware of this. On the independent.co.uk website, there's something about fast radio bursts. Scientists find the source of the most mysterious message in the universe. And apparently it's been dating back since 2007, so 10 years. But they've dated it. They've traced it back to a dwarf star galaxy.
It's red dwarf.
And so dwarf is probably Lister and the cat and everything. But I mean, they seem to be saying that these mysterious messages are kind of like electronic radio bursts of some kind that aren't natural and have some kind of pattern to them. I don't know if you guys have heard about that or can comment on that.
Yeah, I would say be very, very wary and give them a lot of time to analyse it. I mean, there have been numerous kind of false alarms with this sort of thing in the past that have come out over the years where, oh, wow, we've got the signal. And then later on they find out it's a very unusual type of star. I would say give them a lot of detailed analysis. After that, if they did find out that it definitely was an extraterrestrial signal, the question is, would they even release that to the public?
Yeah, I mean, as I said to someone when I saw it about this signal, for instance, if they're already coming here, wherever they're coming from, why would they bother sending a phone call, as it were, from a distant galaxy if they're already here anyway? And also, would they... radio signals are presumably an antiquated kind of form of communication as far as ET or whoever they are would use. More often than not, we find in radio emissions coming out of stars, dead stars, and the edges of black holes or something like that. I mean, I'm not an astronomer, but that's the kind of understanding I get, that radio emissions are a part of the natural universe anyway.
Well,
Yes.
I have to say also, sorry to interject here, but I have to say, don't you think it's really quite laughable that every time something like this comes our way into the public domain, that it's so far away that it won't affect us? It's always got to be so far away, and always left in a question without actually dealing with what's really going on down here at the moment. And there are, I understand, and I know that there is a bigger picture here with regards to a higher structured system that feed down into the media machine, give us, the public, trivia. And if anyone does discover anything that in any way upsets the apple cart, they will go in for the kill, trust me. So I don't buy all that. I mean, it may be true, but that doesn't help us here at this moment in time dealing with UFO subject matter, which is plaguing our world every day to this day.
The way I kind of picture this, the more I read about it, the more I kind of form a kind of a whole kind of worldview of it. I kind of make the analogy that if you think that you're, say, a gamekeeper looking after a national park in Africa or something, you've got all your different creatures there, and periodically you've got to travel out to the far edges of this 1,000-acre, national park to check on your giraffes or your elephants and things like that. And obviously, now and again, you've got to maybe check on the blood for the giraffe. So you kind of put it to sleep, and you take samples, etc., or you're going to artificially inseminate a creature because its breeding is not correct, etc. From the point of view of the giraffe or the whatever it is that's being brought down, they see these strange things come down, and they're running for their lives, and then they're suddenly put to sleep, and then they wake up and they have no recollection or very little recollection of what's happened to them. But periodically they see these strange creatures coming down with machines and things like that. It must be a very strange experience for them, and this is the way I kind of equate it to us humans with the UFO world. The fact that we're monitored, these strangers come down, do things to us. It's almost as if we're part of this national park in our part of the galaxy.
I would agree, absolutely. Yeah.
And then you go back millions of years. They're talking about that supposedly UFOs have been around for a long time, and so we've been looked after or monitored or controlled for a long time on this outer rim of the Milky Way or whatever it is. And going back to the crash retrieval things, another thing that's occurred to me, that obviously if these UFOs have been coming around for a long time, obviously before we ever had our military to bring them down, they must have come a cropper now and again in the long distant past over Earth's history.
Yep.
So my supposition is that there possibly could be ancient crashed craft somewhere out there that not even the military has found yet, hidden in jungles or buried under earth or something like that, in the same way that archaeologists find things that shouldn't be there.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got the Baltic Sea anomaly, which is interesting and hasn't been discussed in the news for quite a while. That all went very quiet, what was going on with that. Very interesting, that.
I recall it vaguely. Can you go over the details of that, Dave?
Yeah, they did a scan of the seabed and found this odd shaped kind of roundish object. Some people said it looked a bit like the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, I recall that.
Yeah, and they took cameras down, and there's definite kind of edges, that look like steps. There's kind of round holes that look like they're chiseled. Now, it appeared to be made out of stone. Yeah, but they did say that there was very strange radio signals. Now, this could just be rumours. This could be an urban legend that's been built up around it. But the people who were out there on the boats said it was interfering with their radio equipment on the boats. Now, and then there's other claims that the military moved in and cordoned off the area. Now, some of these could just be internet claims, and that's the problem, is that we're dealing with an age where there's all sorts of internet rumours going around, and it does muddy the waters, especially regarding to the UFO subject. I would say to anybody out there, check the kind of background credentials of researchers that you're looking into, and trust people who you believe are, who are giving the real information. I mean, I certainly, the cases that I put out are exactly as I've heard them off the individuals, and they can be interpreted in different ways, but I'm not trying to cover anything up at all. I just pass it on to the public. But there's a lot of people out there who are elaborating or completely fabricating stories, and you get that going on all the time. And unfortunately, it does sort of tend to ridicule the UFO subject, and a lot of people don't realise that there's this deep truth behind all that.
Now, we're hearing a lot of people talking about the fact that when they do try and get this information out, that there's people that are being pursued by the authorities, and the word targeted individuals has been used a lot. Has anyone come across that?
Yes. We had an incident go on with my group, where it appears that my group was being monitored. I was working with a contactee from up north in Yorkshire, and he hadn't told anybody at all that he was working with me on his experiences. We were just discussing things over the phone, and we met up a couple of times to go over his case. And he went out to a market, and while he was out at the market, a random individual tapped him on the shoulder, and he turns around, and there's a guy in a brown suit, so Men in Brown, I don't know, and he says to him this. He says, that person you're talking to in Birmingham, how do you know you can really trust him? And then he turns around and just walks out of there, and the man involved sees him get into this car and just drive off. He rings me up almost straight away after this has happened. He tells Dave, "You're not going to believe what's just happened." He's got no reason to make up that story, and I believe that they were monitoring the fact that I was dealing with this case, and for whatever reason didn't want aspects of it getting out into the public domain.
Now, out of interest, this person where this happened to, did they have anything along the lines of black helicopters around their house?
Oh yeah, they've had all sorts of stuff going like that. Yeah, there's been other surveillance and everything involved in that case. But I mean that there was proof to me that my group, Birmingham UFO Group, is being monitored. But I've believed that for a long time, that UFO groups around the UK are monitored. I remember many years ago at a conference seeing a transcript of a UFO TV program, and at the top of it, and this is real, it was straight up document, the real deal, and at the top of it was a list of addresses of where this transcript had been sent to, and on that list was our Parliament, the White House, the Pentagon, the MOD, the CIA, and a number of other companies. Nobody had a clue what they were. It was just unknown names of organisations. Now, why on earth would the Pentagon and the White House be interested in a UK-based programme on the subject of UFOs if there's nothing in it? Ask yourself that. Yeah.
And Philip, when you was researching Rendlesham for quite a while, you were kind of being pursued a little bit there, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was in touch with John Hanson, as you know, as the author of the Haunted Skies series, and he was very helpful when I was dealing with a lot of the research to the book Sky Crash Throughout Time that I was co-authoring with Brenda Butler. I had a lot of her material, and one of the interesting characters in there was a man called David Daniels, and when I met Nick Pope again in Arizona in February, we had a little chat about that. So they were very interested in this non-human entity that made his appearance after the initial Rendlesham UFO encounter. When I was speaking to John Hanson over the phone, John Hanson used to work for the police, so he was very much knowing of phone calls, and I'm sure that we were being tapped quite a lot of the times. I didn't think that there was anything they didn't know that we didn't know that was of interest to them that we were discussing, but most certainly that's the only thing that I've really come close to in terms of monitoring. However, my mobile phone sometimes acts very strange on occasions, and also that when I was linked with BEAMS, the British Earth and Air Mystery Society, and when I was co-authoring a book with Kenneth John Parsons, we had an acceptance from Gateway Books many years ago, but they folded. But our conversations were being, I'm sure, infiltrated by unknown sources. So it's a regular thing, and even BEAMS was being monitored. So Dave, you say about your group being monitored, it wouldn't surprise me at all. They go in, they see who's about, and more times than not, they're just there to see what to see and hear what you know and what you've experienced along with the other people. So they're obviously cataloguing all of the groups.
And have you had the black helicopters yourself? I ask because I know somebody who's highly psychic themselves. They've had weird incidents, and we might get them on the show. She's quite willing to. And one of the major things she has is the helicopters. Now, I've seen them because she lives a mile away from me, and I kid you not, I can see them from my house hovering over hers, and I'll text her and she'll say, yeah, they're back again. Do you know who they are, what they want? What's the deal with the helicopters?
Well, I mean, the helicopters, the only time that I really experienced those was when we were researching in Rendlesham Forest and late into the night, early morning. And on one occasion when we were out there, there was one of them, a huge black helicopter, and it was it was basically annoying us because it kept hovering so low to where we were. We were the only ones in the forest, and it wanted us out. So we decided to go back to the car, and when we went back to the car, Susan's car, my brother and myself, there were tire tracks around the vehicle, and you could see they were fresh. So we drove down away from the base and around a little corner. So we hid the car, and then the helicopter disappeared, and we crawled back up to where the gates are that lead down towards the gates of Eastgate, and all of a sudden there was a huge convoy of these military vehicles coming up the road. So I and Susan hid behind this bark of tree, and by the way, I was wearing a cream-coloured jumper, so trying to hide behind this huge bark of tree, we must have looked absolutely ridiculous. But these vehicles the windows were blacked out. I don't know who they were carrying, what they were carrying. I'm not sensationalizing this story, but for a disused base, they'd gone into the base, and you could see them going into the base, and all in uniform, the way that they were driving very slowly, and that was one occasion. There was another occasion where we were hassled by a helicopter, and it wanted us out, but we saw a flash of a UFO that was coming behind the actual helicopter, and we were trying to point, because the helicopter was so low on the ground in front of us, facing us, we were trying to point to the pilots to say, look, so there's something happening behind you. They weren't interested. They were more interested in seeing what we were doing, and that was very bizarre. When I think back to those occasions, they seem very strange, and but no harm came. I don't think they'd harm us in any way at all. I really don't know what their take was on that. We were just three, people in the forest doing our own bits and pieces. We weren't, holding up the military establishment or anything.
Dave, I was reading through your notes as well that you sent me. Thank you for that. And you've got lots of points that you've made there. And one of them is that, who are they and where are they from? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of theories, isn't there? And obviously one of the most common theories is that they are extraterrestrial in origin. And I think, given the evidence that I've seen over the years and things the beings have said to contactees directly, I would say that that's probably the most likely explanation. There have been some cases where they've actually mentioned particular star systems that they're from. One of the other theories about their origin is that they are extra-dimensional, not extraterrestrial. I believe it's probably a mix of both, because these beings seem to show very, very unusual multi-dimensional characteristics, especially involved with contact, taking people through solid objects, that sort of thing, appearing out of nowhere or out of bright light into the vicinity. So I think that they're probably extraterrestrial with extra-dimensional capabilities, but they can, of course, be very vulnerable and fragile and very physical as well, as seen with the UFO crashes, such as Roswell, which I absolutely believe was a crash of a disc with its occupants. So they can come into our sort of physical reality. There are other possibilities put forward, which some have got more evidence to back them up than others. Some people believe maybe they're time travelers that are sent back from our future. So these beings are something that we've created to come back to harvest genetic material. Other people believe that maybe there's some sort of military project, that these things are kind of grown in labs for whatever reason and are controlled by unknown human groups. And there's other theories that maybe they're a species that have always been here and lived on the Earth alongside humankind since the beginning, and for whatever reason have taken a kind of back step and let us become the dominant species on the planet.
Now, Philip, you have, I believe, some experience of actually meeting some of these beings or being abducted by some of these beings. Do you want to go into that at all?
Yes, I mean, in the winter of 1989, in the village that we lived in, I had an experience that was very traumatic and very difficult for me to come to terms with, because it did involve a lot of controversy in terms of, you hear people getting raped, yeah? And I think when you're dealing with this type of subject, or with them as they call it, it's very, very chilling. And I did have physical marks left after the encounter, and it is a little bit long-winded to go into. But yes, I had an experience, and I dreaded to call it an abduction, but that appears to be what it was. In terms of what they are, what they represent, we have to look at the facts. The facts is that they cannot reproduce, that they are trying to understand us from our level and an emotional level, and it could well be that it's us from the future coming back to try and recorrect something that's gone wrong in terms of reproduction. I mean, after all, if we take this belief a little bit step further, we're under the understanding that we reincarnate and incarnate, and that we are connected to a source. I mean, this is the whole thing we have to look at, because if our life is just a mere speck and then we die, what's the point? Mm-hmm. So there is obviously a much bigger question with regards to what these entities want. They obviously want something, because they're here now in our time doing what they're doing. So,
what did the entities look like that you actually encountered?
Well, it was a grey, but it was more cream-coloured than an actual grey. There was one of them, and there were three what I thought were reptilians, or they looked like, behind steam. When I was taken on board what I assume was a craft, I was laid on a clinical bed. It was very hot in there, and I was naked. I'm not going to go into detail here because it was embarrassing. With regards to the implementation of a device. So I can talk more about that.
In terms of the reptile beings, a lot of people talk about kind of these reptilian beings. Could you describe a bit more in detail? I mean, were they humanoid, for instance?
Well, they were very humanoid, but they were very tall, and I could see only partial bits of them because the steam was so thick, and they were of the normal reptilian if it was in human form, but they were a lot taller, darker, and they were swaying from side to side as they were doing what they were doing to me, and they held no emotion. Even though I was under extreme stress during this situation, it was as though I was just a piece of meat on a slab. But there was one grey on board that craft, I assume was a craft, that was able to communicate with me, and afterwards was able to retract the device from where it had been inserted, and ordered me to dress.
That's interesting. So you say he retracted a device. So do you think he was going against orders? Do you think it was a case of kind of like the scientist releasing the guinea pig behind the scenes kind of thing?
Well, the way that I felt and the way that the situation was, I was very grateful for them. I couldn't answer that question. I don't know. Through empathy, I don't feel so. I think what they'd done is they'd done... I mean, I remembered also that goes into the second part of the encounter when I was asked to leave the craft, and quite shocked to find that a door had opened inside, and I saw myself at great height at the village, and it was morning, so some time had passed because I was taken at night. And that's where Neil, the other being I saw, remember I said to you about the Noddy type character waiting there that was very angry, and as I said, these things are very. I haven't added or subtracted. I've only recounted what I recall, and I had a triangular mark that was inset behind my right ear that my brother tried to take a Polaroid picture of that didn't come out. I couldn't walk very well for a while, and I have 3 marks on my right arm that burn, or they come up as burns sometimes, so I don't know what that's all about. But, you know, I got past that point. During that time, there was hardly anyone I could talk to. Jenny Randall, I did have a call from Jenny Randalls. I was in touch with her for a short while. She seemed to be fascinated by the incident, although, and basically, many people that you could reach out to, not like today, where you have support groups and people who could understand you. And I think I've grown from that experience. I think it was something that I still, to this day, can see as clearly as day.
And just very briefly, because it's almost time to wrap up. Briefly, your understanding of why they're doing it, was any of that communicated to you, or do you have any inklings about
No, not then. Not during them. I had a flash of inspiration in 1996 when I was trying to understand how they were doing what they were doing, and of course that came out as an article in a UFO magazine, quite a big one, called Spirits in the Material World, and that dealt with the aspects of incarnation, reincarnation, soul level, and cloning. And that all came to me. I can't accredit myself to having that because it felt like I was being given it by something else, or something else gave it to me. And I built upon the model of that theoretical idea and I moved it forward. So did it help me? Did the experience help me? Perhaps in some ways. Was it horrific? Yes, it was. It was totally horrific. And, you know, I remember talking about this many, many years ago and to an amused crowd. And, of course, I withdrew because at that time I didn't feel that it was right about what actually had happened. But I'm more interested in the research and that side of it than my own encounter. I still haven't come to terms with what quite happened or why it happened.
Well, as always, unfortunately, time has caught up with us, so to speak. But we'd love to have you both, Dave and Philip, back on the show. So if you're around in the future, would you come on for a second or third instalment?
Absolutely, yeah. No problem at all.
Fantastic. And just quickly,
yes.
Philip and Dave, if you want to just give me your, or give the listeners your either websites or how they can contact you, or any books that you've got going on at the moment.
Sure thing. Should I go first, Philip? Yeah.
Go ahead. You should.
Okay. So my website for the group is bufog.com, bufog.com, and on there you can find details of our upcoming meetings. We hold monthly meetings in Albury, North Birmingham. Anybody's welcome, not just group members. So come along. You can hear speakers, see documentaries, all sorts of things. Real nice little community we've got. And also all the case reports of the cases I've investigated over the last 9 years are on there. Hundreds of case reports for you to read through, and lots of other information. We also have a Facebook page, Birmingham UFO Group. Just type that in and it'll come up. That's our organisation page. And we've also got a Facebook community page where we do a lot of chat and post video links and that. And that's Bufog Truth Seekers. So if you search for that on Facebook, if you use that, get involved and join the group, and hope to hear from you soon.
Fantastic. Philip?
Yeah. I mean, you just find the internet, Philip Kinsella UFO or Philip Kinsella Psychic or whatever, you can get hold of me there. I'm also the author of a few books on UFOs and psychic. I'm working on a Passage Through Eternity that I've got 5 chapters left to do, and I've got a researcher who's going to do the foreword for me on that one. I have a book already with my publishers called You the Public Deceived, so I'm still waiting for a green light from that. The other books, the other books that I've written is Sky Crash Throughout Time, Believe, Bridging the Gap Between the Psychic and UFO Phenomenon, and also Reaching for the Divine. So, as well as children's books and science fiction, but those are the main books on the paranormal. So yeah, that's I'm busy working on some other projects after that. Thank you.
Are you available for private readings as well if people are interested?
Yeah, I'm booked up until February.
Okay.
At the moment, so I'm my niece Charlie, she deals with all of that. Bless her. She sorts it all out for me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dave and Philip, and for taking part. It's been a very, very interesting evening, and unfortunately, as Andy says, we've run out of time now, so it's been great, though, to take a peep into the paranormal world of UFOs, and I'm sure it's something we can come back and take even further, deeper peeps and find out more information. So if any of the listeners want to know more, go to Dave Hodrien's website or Philip Kinsella's website, and you can find out more about their information of what's coming up. And I'm actually due to appear at the Birmingham UFO group. I believe it's March, isn't it, Dave?
Yes, yeah. Did we set a date on that?
We haven't yet. No, we will do soon, though. I will be talking, not on UFOs, I'll be talking on encounters with fairies, ghosts and spirits, but I will do a slight crossover into the world of UFOs as well. Okay, I think that's a wrap for tonight's show, and it's been a very interesting first show to start 2017 off with. Any final words, Andy, before we go?
Yeah, just that I'm currently redesigning my website, www.tunedinevents.co.uk, so that's tuned with a D, in events.co.uk, and hopefully I'm going to be doing a few more events and things coming up, so keep an eye out on that.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, and it's a good night from myself.
And good night from myself.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on your show with all these good people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we'd like to wish everybody a wonderful and happy New Year. Good night, all. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
You was listening to the Paranormal Peep Show with Andy Chaplin and Neil Geddes Ward on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.